We think, therefore we are. We are, therefore we do. We do, therefore we invent. And oh, we invent. Right from the beginning, we've been inventing for the basics, for the revolutionary, for the thing of beauty and wonder, to constantly recreate and reimagine the world we live in. And those inventions, they've made the world easier, richer, more fulfilling, more right for everybody. And each of them began just as a thought, a moment of, what if? Followed by a determined, why not? In that moment, an inventor is born. And the key to their success lies in the unusual idea they don't dismiss. It lies in their courage to challenge the status quo. It lies in the way they blend science, process, creativity, and hard work. It lies in their foresight that what I do today will have a lasting impact on the world. It lies in that magical moment when their idea stops being radical and becomes commonplace, difficult to live without, normal. And with that idea, they change the world into what they imagined it could be. At TCS Research, we seek out and nurture these thinkers and doers. We aspire to create those life-changing, business-changing, humanity-changing inventions. With scientists and researchers and experts from across industries and disciplines, we collaborate to make people healthier, to provide clean energy, to make the digital world safer so that from different corners of the world, more inventors can have their moment of, what if? Why not? We invent for today, for tomorrow, and for the tomorrow after that, to create the future that's ours to shape, to make an impact on everything there is and on everything yet to come.
Hello everyone, welcome to the TCS Research ASM India joint webinar on sustainable smart rethinking urban intelligence. I am Prashant and it is my pleasure to moderate this session today. So today we are here to discuss two very closely related ideas, smart and sustainable, and in the context of cities. Now, cities are the engines of economic growth and opportunity, yet they are major consumers of resources and amongst the most vulnerable to impact of climate changes. So these raises a range of questions, and some of these questions are going to discuss today. So the first one being, can cities continue to prosper while remaining environmentally sustainable? As urban pollution grows and climate risks intensify, how do we balance social, ecological, and economic priorities? Can challenges such as air, water, energy, mobility, public health, resilience be addressed independently, or do they require a more integrated approach? Is urban intelligence simply about technology, connectivity, and efficiency, or is it about enabling people, infra, and the environment to thrive together? And finally, what does it truly mean for a city to be smart, and is sustainability its most important defining characteristics? So, these are some of the questions we hope to explore with our distinguished speakers and panelists today as we rethink urban intelligence through the lenses of sustainability. So, over the next 90 minutes, this session will explore these themes from multiple perspectives. Uh, we will begin with the keynote address titled A Holistic Approach to Sustainable Urban Futures, and it will be followed by a fireside chat on whose sustainability is it anyways. But before we get on with this session, let me take this opportunity to welcome and invite Dr. R. Venkateswaran to brief us about ASIM India. Over to you, Venki.
So, Prashant, let me quickly share my screen and get started. Those who are not familiar with ASIM India, let me take a moment to introduce ASIM India to all of you. ASIM India is the world's largest educational and scientific computing society, geared primarily towards the audience, which is the computing professionals. It was established in 1947, coincidentally the same year as the India's independence. So there's a lot that ACM and India have in common. ASIM India itself was set up in 2010, it's about 15, 16 years back. And we have been very fortunate to have seen significant growth in this community in ASIM India. Worldwide, there are more than 1 lakh members who subscribe to ASIM, out of which about 19,000 are from India. So roughly 20% or 19% of the ASIM membership comes from India. Of these 19,000, about 11,500 are student members and 7,500 are professional members, people who are probably on this call today. Okay. The way ASIM India operates, there are several chapters, mainly student chapters, about 300 of them, and about 24 professional chapters in various cities or various associations with specific interest groups, like what we call as the SIG, the special interest groups. And there are also 72 chapters which are focused primarily on the women engineers, called ACMW. The reason for setting up these chapters is that ASIM is very, very keen to nurture the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Charter, the DEI Charter, and ASIM India, with its women chapters, is aligned to the vision that ASIM has set for the DEI Charter. Why should a professional member or a student member be part of this community or this fraternity? Primarily, there are many initiatives that ASIM nurtures, ASIM India nurtures. Some of them are listed here. Couple of them on the professional side. For a professional member, there are many opportunities for them to brand themselves through the Eminent Speaker program, which allows professionals to participate as experts and visit various academic institutes and share their knowledge and insights with the student community. There are also programs associated with what we call as industry webinars, where again we provide opportunity for experts to come and share their knowledge with the community at large. We encourage fireside chats. We conduct hands-on boot camps and so on. The overall objective here is to foster the industry academia engagements. On the research side, if you are more aligned with research, then ASIM India supports a lot of research initiatives. There are a lot of conferences that ASIM India sponsors. And for these conferences, ASIM India supports the students through various travel grants, and also an opportunity for them to interact with the researchers, with the research community. Also, there are various conferences that ASIM sponsored, like I said, which Cardstone is one, ISEC other, and there are many such things. The education initiatives, ASIM sponsors on an every year. It sponsors about 5 to 6 summer schools and 5 to 6 winter schools. These are very immersive, hands-on, 2-week sessions, which provides a platform for students to learn from the experts directly. We also have programs like the Teaching Partnership Program and the CS Pathshala that promote computational thinking in schools. And we also sponsor the India AI Olympiad. You may be glad to know that the AI Olympiad, the support from ASIM, I mean, we have been mentoring the participants, and they have really shown remarkable success by winning various gold and silver medals in the international forum. We also recognize various contributions both from the student as well as the professional chapters through the HM India Professional and Student Chapter Awards. Various categories in which these awards are given. All this would not have been possible without our industry partners. And as part of the industrial partnership program, we have many partners who have been supporting all the initiatives. I'm glad to say that TCS Research has been one of the early supporters ever since 2011, year two of ASM India being present in India. They have been supporting this. They sponsor the ASM India, the annual doctoral dissertation award. And this has been going on since 2011. And they have, of course, been supporting us in many initiatives as well. Google, Persistent, Infosys, Ola, and IBM are also been one of our institutional partners supporting us throughout. So if you'd like to take advantage of what ASM India has to offer, please subscribe and become a member. The link for membership is given here at the bottom. There's also a QR code. So if you are, can just scan the QR code and become a member. The membership benefits are given in the benefits page. And there is a link for both student and professional, depending on who you are. Please feel free to click on the correct link and become a member. That I'll stop here. This is the committee members on the right side, and I'll be happy to take any questions at an appropriate time. For now, I'll hand the floor back to Prashant. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Venki. So let us formally begin with today's proceedings with the keynote address on a holistic approach to sustainable urban futures. So the keynote talk will be delivered by Professor Sachinand Tripathi. Let me take a moment to introduce him, and then I'll hand the floor over to him for his talk. So he is the inaugural Dean of Kotak School of Sustainability at IIT Kanpur and professor in the Department of Civil Engineering and the Department of Sustainable Energy Engineering. He currently also holds the Sir M. Vishwesharaya Chair Professorship at the Institute. He obtained his BTech from IIT BHU in Civil Engineering in 1992, MTech in Environmental Engineering from NIT Allahabad in 1995, and PhD in Atmospheric Physics from University of Reading, UK in 2001. After a brief stint of postdoctoral research at Bhabha Atomic Research Center and University of Oxford, Professor Tripathi joined IIT Kanpur as faculty in 2003. In the past decade, he has undertaken seminal work in developing state-of-the-art air quality monitoring and management technologies in India. He is credited with implementing the largest sensor-based air quality network in India, which has resulted in several cities of India starting to adopt this technology to improve decision-making. In recognition of his significant contributions, he has been honored with numerous awards in physical science as well as in engineering. He is the recipient of the Alexander Humboldt Medal 2025. He is the recipient of Santi Swarup Bhatnagar Award, J.C. Bose National Fellowship, and Infosys Prize 2023 in Engineering and Computer Science. He is an elected fellow of the Indian National Academy in Science Academy, Indian National Academy of Engineering, and National Academy of Sciences of India, and recipient of the Distinguished Alumnus Award of BHU. Over to you, Professor Tripathi, and welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Mishra, and thanks to TCS Research for giving me this opportunity to share some of the work we have been doing here at IIT Kanpur, and as a part of AICOE, which is, of course, partnering very closely with Tata Consulting Services. So let me share my slides. Give me a second. So I believe that now you can see my slides and I'm totally audible, correct?
Yes.
So, yeah. So as was pointed out that, yes, there's a new school at IIT Kanpur. It's a part of 3 new schools which Institute has set up over last probably 2 years. And School of Sustainability is one of them. And I happen to also basically be associated with Airawat Research Foundation, which is AI Center of Excellence on sustainable cities, which is one of the 4 such AI centers that have recently been set up by GOI. And for some time, I have been associated with the Center on Air Quality Monitoring, which is supported by Principal Scientific Advisor to Government of India, which is named as, or shortly named as Atman. So basically, I think the idea here is that we should not really look at cities in silos. Rather, we should see that how we can bring intelligence, environment, and ecology, bring the systemic approach and institutions, and how one can take the decisions based on evidence in order to make a city more livable and more long lasting. So if you look at the history, I mean, the cities which have progressed over a period of time and which has make their residents very, prosperous, healthy. These cities are those which really have been, kind of had all these ingredients what we are talking about here. So the key idea is there that basically we need to have a system approach to our cities. That's the key part of it. We know that while we consume in the city, of course, be it consumption of energy or food or water, which are, of course, all the resources, then, of course, it would have certain footprint. And that footprint is in terms of emissions of greenhouse gases or pollution. So these some kind of burdens that brings onto the city. So it's very important that when we look at the design of city, we really think of infrastructure and environment together. And that has been actually kind of the way, if you look, most of the Indian cities way in past were, kind of designed in that way. And we were very much mindful about the environment. And if you look at the history of some of the, very well-known Indian cities, but I don't have a time to go into that as of now. I'll also tell a little bit about this Airawat, that is the Center of Excellence on AI for Sustainable Cities, and how we are working with many other industries, including Tata Consulting Services. And one important theme that Tata Consulting Services have brought into this is basically how one can make use of data to look at the urban metabolism, that how cities operate, where are basically the hotspots in terms of emissions, primarily greenhouse gases, as well as pollution, and where are, basically the water bodies. So all in all, how the overall city in terms of ecology it operates. So if you look at that, basically there are 3 important ingredients of a sustainable city. One is that how do we consume the resources? In terms of resources, that is, how do you consume energy? Where do you grow your food? How do that food get transported to the city? And the whole thing will have, of course, different kind of footprints. That if your city actually is bringing food from way outside of the city, of course, you will have lots of footprint because of the transport which is being used to bring the food. And likewise in case of water and many other things. The second important characteristic of city is resilience. That a resilient city will bounce back to its original state in a very short time. Any kind of disaster or any kind of, let's say, risk, what has come in the way of the city, of course, it will be able to overcome that and then certainly come back to the life very fast. And the third part is that the resources it depletes, how quickly it can regenerate it. So if there are these 3 things which are there in a city, certainly we call that in a way that city is a sustainable city. So since primarily the talk is going to be about the use of data, that how data can help city planner, city officials, city governors to arrive at decision making in a very quick time and then design intervention. So next couple of slides, I will be talking more about that, what kind of data provenance we have in Indian cities and how we are making use of that data to build models, and that models can then basically help to come quickly at decision making. So we know that over last a decade or so, Indian cities have made great progress in terms of creating data provenances. There are some clear, measured or measurable way by which you can say that the smart cities have been able to create large network of these CCTV cameras. And then there are also commensurate network of sensors. So we have adequate amount of data that is present in these cities, or at least large and medium-sized cities in the country. The problem, on the other hand, is that many of these data do not speak to each other. So, for example, the images which are collected by the cameras will not be speaking to the sensors which are there to measure air quality, water quality, or many other such parameters. So the data, if they don't speak, it doesn't amount to intelligence. Second, many of these provenances or data structure is created by different operators, different vendors, and they generally have or have a particular kind of operating system. So there is some kind of lock-in is there. And third problem is that interoperability is missing. So we all have seen that many a times whenever there is a disaster struck or any kind of very big environmental episode comes into a city, we are able to explain it post facto, but we are not able to predict it in advance. And as we all know now that prediction is a very important part of bringing resilience into the city. So that is where we are going to discuss that in a little more detail as we go along. So what basically the philosophy behind creating Eravat Research Foundation or AI Center of Excellence is to create these three-layer structure, which is basically creating a foundation for building these models. So first thing, we need to have digital public infra across these cities. And these infrastructure needs to be AI ready. The AI model which are going to be run on these systems, these infrastructure has to be secure, and they have to be, of course, trustworthy. And the third thing is that, as I talked about, that data in silo should basically break the silo and data should be able to speak to each other. That is the first layer on which we are basically creating this entire architecture. The second part of this architecture is to bring intelligence into it. So we need to have a unified data, of course, fabric. We are going to build or already building different kind of pipelines for AI and ML models. And of course, using the information what are existing in different cities, in different domains, we are also going to create small language models or large language models so that it has also agentic capability in this entire, decision support system which you are building. And finally, it needs to have a very friendly interface with the users, whether it's the people, citizens, or the officials. So whether it's the service provider or service seeker, they should have a very good interface with this entire decision support system. So in very short, we are thinking about that future cities in India which will be sustainable will be those which will be vertical, wise, and of course they will be modular. So there are basically 5 tracks across which AICO is working. These are basically can be binned across monitoring, mobility, energy, governance, and water. So I'll be actually talking in detail about monitoring. And then of course, I will also talk about what we are working on with TCS on creating these urban metabolism models. And we have also worked closely with some of the leading energy utility companies in building digital twins. And that is part of the work we have done in Mumbai and in Ahmedabad city. And of course, in many cities, we are trying to give them different kind of solutions related to urban governance. It's in the state of Punjab, in the state of Madhya Pradesh, and many other states. So basically, the idea is that we want to basically close this loop, that where we have the measurement which gives the signals, we want to arrive at decisions quickly, which are cross-sectoral, because we know that, as I discussed, that cities are very complex system. In fact, it's a system of systems. So cross-sectoral decision making is very important to arrive at quickly in order to take decisions and then design intervention. And then closing the loop implies that the interventions are evaluated and we move forward in the right direction. So here's one example where basically we are able to create an end-to-end pipeline from creating of data to, of course, creating models which are currently being deployed in many cities of Kanpur, Lucknow, part of Delhi, Ahmedabad, and Mumbai. So some example I will give you here, that this is map of the states of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. And what you see, the red dots show the existing monitoring stations run by the government agencies in these two states, which are about 95. And what we have done as a part of our existing center, Atman, we have added about 1380 air quality sensors, which are indigenous sensors in each and every block of these two states. And these are basically relaying streaming data of particulate matter and weather parameters in real time. So by putting this network, we have been able to increase the availability of data from 1 in every 3000 square kilometer to 1 in every 200 square kilometer in these two states. And what it has led to is creation of first data-driven airshed delineation in these two states. So what you see that in the map of these two states, that a bunch of these different colored dots show a particular airshed where air pollution behaves in a similar fashion. So what it allows basically that moving away from the air quality management, which has been done on the basis of the administrative units, that is district or city or state, to an airshed which actually follows the natural transport or natural flow of pollution. So that way, what one can do, that one can work in a cooperative fashion to achieve a lot more in a limited amount of resources compared to if you basically do air quality management, what has been the practice earlier. So what, in addition to creation of these airsheds, we also have been able to get quite a few very interesting scientific findings out of this work and the large amount of data what we have here. Certainly, I don't have time to get into that here. The other work which is going on currently in Ahmedabad, where we have built a mobile laboratory. The mobile laboratory is like a lab which can be run on wheels, and wherever it goes in 10 to 15 days, it gives complete information about sources, the type of sources, the location of sources, and timing of the sources, mainly pollution sources. So what we have done that in Ahmedabad, currently we have deployed it at Sabarmati Riverfront Stadium. And idea is that once we get in 10 to 15 days, the kind of sources which are primarily contributing to the ambient pollution which we are exposed to will be trained with the existing sensors by developing machine learning models. And idea is that these machine learning models can actually work in a very federated fashion, that from few locations where mobile laboratory is deployed, eventually it can be scaled across a sensor network which will be running in a city. So everywhere where there is a sensor data streaming, one can get source information, and that can feed into decision support system. And therefore, it can truly make a city smart in terms of doing the air quality management. That is what we are doing currently in Ahmedabad. And mainly the idea is to secure clean air while Ahmedabad city is hosting Commonwealth Games in 2030. I talked about the Mumbai network. Mumbai operates about 25 to 30 government monitors. We have augmented this with first of its kind globally sensor network, which basically has two additional features. One is that first time at that scale, we are also getting particle distribution. That is, in different bins, we are getting particle numbers, which brings a unique feature or signature of the sources. And second, Mumbai being a coastal city with very high humidity, we have also installed a dehumidifier in each of these sensors. This network is already operational since June 22 this year. And the data that is coming from this is part of a dashboard which is currently running in the environmental department of Mumbai Municipal Corporation. And eventually this will be integrated in integrated control and command center of the city of Mumbai. Another interesting technology we have developed, where what you see that we have harnessed the power of satellite imagery, and we have created a complete machine learning model using the government monitor, sensor-based observations, and satellite imagery. We have been able to predict pollution level at half square kilometer in the city of Lucknow. And this is portable model. Wherever such kind of data is available, it can always be deployed there. So in that way, in Lucknow, from 4 monitoring stations, from 4 data points, we have been able to expand or scale it to about 2,000 data points. And what you see on the right top in that box, that every half square kilometer, you can get a prediction of pollution, particulate matter 2.5, and that can be then linked to different kind of sources. And of course, that would form the basis for subsequent air quality management. So what you see that as a part of Airavate Research Foundation, what we have done that some of the machine learning and AI models I just gave a flavor of are all integrated, and they are all running on the backbone of all type of multimodal data, be it the government monitors or sensors or satellite imagery. And in fact, currently we are also working on how we can predict particulate matter and other pollution using the video imagery. All of that are forming basically the foundation of these models, and they are all integrated to create an intelligent decision support system, which is shown on the right here, that it can identify the hotspot, it can predict the sources, its location and timing, which is causing the hotspot. It can give you an idea that how do we manage the air quality at an airshed level, and accordingly the city officials can really work out a strategy and look after that how they can curb or plug the pollution to bring any spike which is happening in any ward or sub-ward level in a city. So as I said that this decision support system is being deployed in Kanpur. It should be operational from the first week of August, followed by Lucknow, and then part of Delhi. And it also will be part of the Ahmedabad air quality management. And a scaled down version of this also will be running in Mumbai. Now that was one part of the work which we are doing at AICOE, that is Airavate Research Foundation. The second part of the work, which is equally important, to understand how a city metabolizes. So basically what we want to understand, that can we give in a seamless way that which are the places in a city which are big CO2 hotspots, carbon dioxide or methane hotspot, depending on what kind of sources are operating there, and also understanding about the water and vegetation and everything about a city. So the whole idea basically is built on 4 pillars here, that understanding what is the burden on a city, basically in terms of when you consume, then there of course will be something be emitted. These are pollution. What kind of risks it bring? It could be extreme weather or pollution episodes or flood. I talked about resilience earlier. And then what type of benefits that come to the city because of consumption of resources. Of course, it contributes to the economy. So I'm very happy that from the very beginning of the conceptualization of this COE, which when we were in the fray to get this, Tata Consulting Services was part of this, and that really now the work has moved forward in a significant way. So this is, of course, the details of the model on the framework which TCS is working on. So you can see that they are in a big way exploiting the satellite imagery, the hyperspectral satellite imagery, and creating different kind of models which can certainly convert or transform from images to pollution, and can also really work out that what is the emission strength of different kind of these greenhouse gases, and then kind of create a overall structure that can help city officials to plan the growth of city in a most sustainable way. That's the key idea here. And of course, there are a lot more details here. I will not go into that. But basically, if you look here, is that you have four kind of models. That one type of model basically convert images to land use and land cover. The second model converts the images to the type of pollution. So what you see that M2 converts images to particulate matter 10 in that case. And there are two more models. One can give you that how the land use, land cover is changing over a period of time in a city. And finally, it can also tell you that what kind of changes are happening in terms of the forest cover or water body coverage, etc. And they can all then be linked to different kind of, categories of parameters related to be it water or air or soil, etc. And that can certainly then give you very critical information about the social, economic, and environmental well-being of the city. So this is the history of our association, that AICOE association with Tata Consulting Services. And I said that from the very beginning, we partnered. And of course, when the COE came last year, we finally created or inked an MOU with TCS. And that work is going very well. And we are very much looking forward to that the decision support system, which is currently being deployed in different cities, can integrate that urban metabolic models which are being built by TCS. So I'll just give one or two examples what actually TCS has built until now, mainly focusing on the city of Lucknow. So there are some data here related to Lucknow, and as you can see that in terms of or comparing with other cities, Lucknow is emitting huge amount of carbon dioxide. And so there is clearly a need that the way we plan the growth of the city, which is growing actually at a very fast rate, how could we minimize these kind of emissions from Lucknow? So, for example, one very good example of the models which TCS has built is basically converting from images to the land use, land cover, and it immediately gives you that how the city has changed in terms of coverage of soil, impervious land, and vegetation from 2014 to 2024. And now the way this model works, that one can go into their dashboard and one can take any slice of time and one can see that how this entire thing is changing. Another good example is that of course, working with another kind of a model pipeline, one can convert from imagery to, again, different kind of land use over a city. For example, there are two examples which are shown here on the right. On top is city of Nairobi, on bottom is Pune. And as you can see that different colors show different kind of land use, and one can very clearly see that what are the differences between these two very distinct kind of cities. And using land use, land cover, and different kind of parameterization, empirical model, one can compute emissions of these greenhouse gases quite accurately. So that is the power what we have, going from hyperspectral images to estimating emission rates which are coming from various activities in different kind of cities. So that's also is kind of working over Lucknow. So that is what already has been built here, that there is a urban metabolism system is already built. The next job is to bring intelligence into that. Another very interesting framework has been created where the sustainable development goals for the city is being looked from the lens or integrated lens of sustainability, which actually rests on the pillars of society, people, nature, and economy. So that is another very interesting dimension. That is what TCS has brought to the table, or basically to the AICOE here. So, of course, this is my final slide here, that from now what we are looking at is that we are looking at in integrating the decision support system, as I showed earlier, that was closing the loop from measurement to designing and creating the sizing of the intervention and evaluating it. That was primarily focusing on air pollution. And what we want to do is now we want to bring this urban metabolism model into that. And next would be also to be able to predict heat and other stresses at a very finer and granular level. So that's where we are moving. So I'm very confident that as we go and deploy in the cities, for example, I said that Kanpur, and we are going to have this next deployment in Lucknow, we will be able to have this integrated decision support system, and that will be used by the city officials to plan and create these two cities. And of course, then we'll go to the further as well. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Professor Tripathi. That was a wonderful talk. And as you rightly said, I think this is a very ambitious dream. And I think given the kind of team we have, we are very hopeful that we will actually be able to make a difference in the social cities in the years to come. So we will take questions for the end once we are done with the fireside chat. So next, we'll move on to the next segment of this webinar, which is a fireside chat on whose sustainability is it anyway? Where we will examine how different stakeholders, their priorities and trade-offs are shaping the sustainability agendas of our cities. So for this fireside chat, we are joined by a distinguished list of panelists. Of course, Professor Tripathi will join us in this fireside chat. We also have Professor Nipun Batra, who's an associate professor in IIT Gandhinagar. We have Dr. Praveen Bhagwat, he's the founder of 14 Trees Foundation. We have Dr. Shailesh Deshpande, who is a principal scientist at TCS Research. We have Professor Bakul Rao, professor at IIT Bombay. Of course, I think the talk by Professor Tripathi set the context in terms of what do we mean by when we say cities ought to be smart. But I will probably start this discussion by reposting the question back to Professor Tripathi. I think if I summarize a couple of the points that you discussed, you mentioned that cities are a system of systems. When we mention about smartness, we should look at three verticals per se: efficiency, resilience, regeneration. So I just wanted to understand, have these matrices changed over the years? Because as a smart cities, the idea of smart cities has been there for a very long time. The journey is still on. So when we started with the idea of smart cities, did we start with these three matrices, or have they evolved over the years? And probably what are the new matrices that you believe will be more significant in the years to come? So let me start with that question to you, Professor Tripathi.
Well, I mean, to my understanding, the smart cities were built on the basic premise of, creating a digital infrastructure across these smart cities, right? Mainly a digital infrastructure. And the hope was that basically that infrastructure will pave the way for, better decision making and creating interventions. So in that way, I would say that, yes, there is a very logical progression from what has been created. And now, given the advent of these, AI and AI related models, I think we should be moving in that direction. I am not sure about that, whether there was any metric created, but what I certainly believe in that there is huge scope in terms of basically having that one kind of integrated, let's say, digital infra, which is intelligent, and that can really help in terms of planning the way current transport plannings are done in our cities. So basically helping with the mobility. It can also, in certain, circumstances, can help that how currently the energy demand is predicted and how we see the consumption. And third, of course, it can also help cities have a much better environmental governance. So basically, the way I look at it, that transport, energy, and the environment, these three basically, I think, are the key part of any cities. How do you run and how do you manage these three things would make a particular city very livable. And I tell you that when probably the energy uses was not so high, and then of course the new means of transport were not there. Many of the Indian cities, if you look at, not long back, maybe 300, 400 years ago, and look at the example of, for example, city of Udaipur. That city, it's surprising that in the midst of desert, that city had surplus water. And the canal hasn't come at that time to the city. And the most part of Udaipur had a triple cropping system. I'm just telling you that how these cities were, but on the way somewhere we lost it. So the idea here is not to go back, but idea here is that how can we create a system where, that citizens feel that that city is serving them. And that is only possible when I think different systems of the city speak to each other. And that, I think, possibility we have, what, that the data, what we have currently, and the kind of these small language models or our own local models, what we are creating, can really, give us that possibility.
Sure, sure. I think that was a good summary of I think what all the way we imagine smart cities to be. But I'll probably move the podium to Professor Bakul. So what Professor Tripathi has said is what does smartness mean, right? But would you have a view on what does smartness not mean in terms of what are the biggest misconceptions that we hold when we think about smartness and cities in this current age and time?
Thank you, Dr. Mishra. I hope you are able to hear me. So very interesting, the word smart city. We often think that, like what Professor Tripathi mentioned, is digital infrastructure, and digital infrastructure alone will solve the problems of the city. So the thing is, more and more focus when it comes to smartness, we have said that it has to be digital, it has to be something to do with models. And somewhere down the lane, we seem to be missing out who the people are, because cities are finally a living organism, and the way the dynamics works is something maybe our models can capture all the dynamics, but at least now we are not able to capture all the dynamics, and hence that this digital infrastructure alone can solve the problem and become a smart, while sustainable can be smart needn't to be sustainable. Like what Professor Tripathi mentioned, that resilience and regenerating, we have seen that more and more the city is growing ad hoc and in a very organic fashion. The resilience, like he mentioned, the Udaipur thing, the resilience is going down. And of course, when the resilience goes down, the regenerating power itself goes down because our dependence on outside. So understanding the system, which includes the growth inside where people matter, and of course the dependency on the external, outside the city, the hinterland, which gives most of our resource, is very important. And the misconception is that by digital infrastructure can help you monitor, can help you optimize, but where are the people to use that optimized models? Where are the people who can help you actually provide solutions, which is humane, which considers the organic nature of that city? And so there is something which still needs to become into the smart city models, which are people centric and which will deliver. That's something which I think, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. No, I think if I summarize what you just mentioned, so essentially when we talk about smart cities, it is definitely digital has to be there, but it also has to be focused on people, because they are the ones who ultimately consume the outcome of this digital structure. And if people are not the center of these things, then all that smartness is of no use. I think that's a very valid point you made. The second point you made is that being sustainable implies smartness, but the reverse is not necessarily true. And that's a very important point you made here. So that brings me the question to Dr. Praveen Bhagwat. So in the context of cities, do you think smart and sustainable should always go together? Or should they probably need not be together in the short run, maybe in the long run? Or do you see that they should be together in short run, but not the long run? Or they should always be together forever? So what's your take when you have been given these multiple choices?
So I'll actually take a kind of a step back and look at this picture from a 50,000-foot view. If you look at history, I mean, cities are the centers of economic activity. They are centers of economic growth.
Mm-hmm.
And economy is growing, and so other cities are growing. But there is a very clear inverse correlation between economic growth and the nature and environment destruction. And if you go back in history, cities started near the rivers because humans needed, access to water. So most of our major metros in the world are situated right next to the water sources. And over the last 200 to 300 years, these centers have been growing rapidly. And today, if you look at the footprint of those cities, is within the 100 to 200 kilometer radius. The entire resources of that region are being sucked and consumed to power those cities. So clearly, this trend of overconsumption of nature in terms of energy, in terms of food supplies, and the environmental footprint is clearly not sustainable. But with the introduction of technology, I think we have the opportunity to figure out how we optimize our consumption and break that inverse correlation. So I think I see clearly need to now bring in innovation so that economic growth can happen while the consumption curve flattens. And another stage of growth actually can come by coming up with innovation so that you fuel economic growth out of reduction of consumption. So I think in the next 50 years, we're going to see a very exciting journey here. But clearly, sustainability has to happen, or else this trend is not sustainable.
And I think very interesting points, Dr. Praveen. I think what you're saying that, first of all, in the present state, consumption is going up. So we need tech to optimize and balance out that consumption and still grow in the way that we are. But going forward, you believe that we would end up in a state where we would still grow by reducing the consumption. So that's a very nice future state. And I think for people on the stream, I think these are some very key takeaway points that the panel is making here. So with this, I'll move on to the next set of questions. And here we'll try to get into a little bit details about sustainability, sustainable models, and the larger technical philosophy around sustainability. So one of the key ideas that has caught the imagination of modeling sustainability or certain cities is this idea of urban metabolism. And that is something that has been talked about. In fact, we in TCS have been trying to champion this model, and we have been very deliberately working on it. And I will pose this question to Dr. Shailesh. Dr. Shailesh, would you probably take us through the thought process of thinking of cities as urban metabolic centers, and how do you use that idea in practice, and how do you use that to actually charter the course of the cities, linking back to what Dr. Praveen just said?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Prashant. So hope I'm audible to you.
Yeah.
So as most of us have pointed out that city certainly consumes a lot of resources, and certainly it leads to some of the degradation we're talking about, right? So let me just take the similar approach, but before we go to the cities and what cities do to the environment and all that, we just let's quickly take a look at a cell as a living instance or living entity or model for whatever UMS will talk about. So take a simple example of simple cell. It consumes carbohydrate. That's the energy. That's a food for cell. And while it consumes, it will try to grow or maintain itself or move and so on and so forth. So that energy is for its activity. And while it is doing so, it is certainly creating some metabolic waste. The cell itself has to be protected from some external risk. Metabolic waste examples could be CO2. It could be, if it's fermentation, then it could be other thing. Lactic acid is also. So all these wastes are treated by cells. So now let me go back to the cities and map those entities. Okay. So city also consumes food, a lot of energy that we talked about. And city also grows, then it has to maintain itself and so on and so forth. And now while it is doing so, also it is creating metabolic waste, which is solid waste, CO2, which is the reason CO2 and methane, other gases, which are resulting in climate change in long run. Now what UMS does is exactly, it tries to create a models which relates city activities or some of the city attributes to these emissions or consumptions. So simply put, let's say I want to identify the amount of CO2 emitted by a particular city. Then at a very approximate level, maybe I can just take number of buildings and relate it to CO2. Just this is an example. The models are quite complex. So if you ask me a simple question that what exactly is urban metabolism system, then it is nothing but a collection of models which relate some of the activity in the city to emission or consumptions. So with that, what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to work out current consumptions, current emissions. At the same time, we can predict the future scenarios also. Now, regarding your second question, whether they are useful in practical sense and would you use them for planning and all? So indeed, we want to. In fact, that's what we have created them, because earlier metabolism systems were purely of audit nature, or maybe they were just material flow calculated and so on and so forth. But now with these relations established clearly, we can actually use them for planning purposes, because we will be able to generate what if scenarios with these relations. So number of buildings example I took, right? So maybe similarly we can say types of buildings. Professor Tripathi had shown one example where from images we are converting them into types of land use classes. Now they can be related also with the emissions. The idea is simple, but there are many sophisticated ways to extract information from the images and also relate to the pollution parameters or consumptions and so on and so forth. So hope it was useful in some sense.
Yeah, so I think so. The summary, to summarize what you just said, I think this idea of urban metabolism or urban metabolic systems slash models, while in the past they have been used for simple auditing purposes, you see that going forward they can be actually used for playing forward scenarios in terms of planning for the future, as well as predicting what's going to happen in the future, and based on that, what actions we should take today. So that's the summary of what we just mentioned.
And one more important point, if I would like to add, see that they are all activity based or city characteristics models. Okay, so because of that, they help us in planning. So tomorrow I can generate a what if scenario. If what happens if this number of buildings are increased, whatever it is, then immediately I can generate the scenario for consumption as well as emission. Of course, this is much simplistic example. The real models are quite complex here.
Got it. Got it. So with this background, or let's say this idea that we can have systems which will help us to fast forward in the future, and based on that we can decide what to do now. So I will now take the stage to Professor Nipun and the question. So essentially, Professor Nipun, we would like to delve in segment of what do cities do to the environment, and what does environment do to the cities. So in that context, what do you think, how can sensing and AI help answer these two questions? The first question being, what does city do to the environment, and what does the environment do to the city? So over to you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for the excellent question, Prashant. And I'm very happy that the previous set of speakers have already answered part of my question, so I don't have to go very deep. So without going into the technical details first, what do cities do to the environment? I think COVID showed us that. We could see a lot of animals on ground. We could see mountains about 300 kilometers away. We could finally breathe some fresh air. So it clearly showed what cities are doing. So it's effectively what the consumption is leading to. Now, as the previous speakers have also been speaking, and I'm very happy for the fact that you've mentioned AI and sensing and not just AI. So I think the sensing has to take a major burden of understanding this problem better. Where are the humans? Where is the city consuming things? Where is the transportation sector consuming? Which sectors are consuming how much energy and how much resources? And finally, how much is the footprint of the city? So all of that can be perhaps much better done with some amount of sensing and some amount of AI acting on some proxy sensors. As an example, power plants. So I don't really know how much coal they have consumed. It will be very hard. But I can do using some simplistic modeling. If I know the power consumption, the power generated, I can do some back of the envelope calculation, figure out some static factors. So that's how we can build some statistic factors to understand what a city is doing to the environment. What is the environment doing to the city, and as a consequence of that, how do we enable AI to help understand that better? So I would also say that a lot of it, what the environment is doing to the city, is also because the cities have done some more damage. People are building perhaps buildings which are in flood-prone areas. People are not so the cities are not able to adhere to the norms of air pollution control, water pollution control, etc. As a consequence of that, the nature gives back. And now, once you have those events, I think AI in sensing can perhaps understand the health impact of that, the impact on perhaps the economy of the city, the livelihood of the city. So all of that, it can help, and much more it can help in being resilient, as Professor Tripathi was also mentioning. So we can build those models to try and carry out the specific kind of interventions.
Okay. So essentially, if I have to piece that out, so what you're saying is that when you're looking at large systems at large scale, and cities are essentially systems of very large scale, so you need, of course, you need some element of sensing to figure out what is happening. But given the fact that we're dealing with systems very large scale, it may not be physically possible to actually have a very detailed sensing infra, and that's why using a lot of these computational models and tools and AI techniques, you could probably be able to approximate and estimate in a reasonably good manner what is happening on the ground, and based on that, take some predictive measures and so on and so forth. So if I summarize what you just mentioned, so I think while we wanted to keep the panel non-tech, I think it's slightly getting more technical. So I'll probably try to again uplift the panel from that and pose this question back to Praveen. So Praveen, you just heard a lot of these conversations and opinions about smart, sustainable, how to use tech, how to use AI, sensing, and so on and so forth. But given that you have championed the 14 Trees initiative, where you are looking at urban managed forests and green initiatives, I'd like to understand from you firsthand what are some of the biggest challenges you have faced in implementing the sustainable initiatives. And I think nobody can better than you, because you have been a tech for a major portion of your professional career. Now you are probably using a lot of that knowledge to actually build this, drive the sustainability initiative. So I would like to hear from you on these points, essentially.
Yeah, I think as I kind of got involved in sort of my reforestation effort and getting a chance to interact and meet with a lot of people and talk across the section of society, what I observed that, if you look at a common man, common man's, is brutally focused on, economic well-being and climbing up the curve of prosperity. That is the aspiration of a common person.
Mm.
People do understand that as they climb up that aspiration curve, overall, our CO2 emissions are increasing. We are, moving towards an unsustainable world. That people understand that, but the way people think is that, look, this is the government's job to worry about these issues. I mean, I have to buy my next car. I have to buy my next apartment. So, and it is a COP28's problem to worry about how to, take care of these. I'm paying my taxes, so I'm, living a responsible life. It is them who have to worry about it. There's nothing I can do at a personal level to really deal with these issues. That's the common psyche. And I think, as Professor Bakul Rao also very aptly pointed out, that we have to look at the psyche of the end user. That technological innovations certainly are needed. They will bring in the efficiencies, but ultimately the system has to become sustainable. The end user behavior has to be shaped. And I think the biggest challenge I have seen is, how do you shape the end user behavior while everyone wants to climb up that aspiration curve? So it's not a pure tech, it's a socio-economic psychology problem.
So, Praveen, do you think we will get in this catch-20 situation all the time, wherein at some level appears like a tech problem, then it appears like a social tech problem, and then somebody comes back, no, it's a tech problem. So where do we draw the line over there? Because I think
I will later comment at a point at how tech can actually help. So while this is a complex socio-economic problem, tech has a bright future in attempting, presenting a solution, which is exactly what we are doing. But I kind of let the discussion progress a little bit, and I'll kind of, share some of my thoughts.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So we move on to the next question, and this next question is to Professor Tripathi. So Professor Tripathi, I've heard so many comments on the different kinds of questions that have been raised. So would you be able to summarize for us what are the different kinds of urban activities that contribute most to climate change? And what are the kind of interventions that we currently have in practice, or we plan to have in practice to actually counter that?
Yeah, I mean, let me first tell you that, as I think this panel and the entire audience knows, that climate change has emanated from the global emissions. I mean, it's not, of course, everyone is emitting locally, but if you do something locally at city scale, it's not going to directly kind of contribute to what's happening related to climate change, because the primary driver, carbon dioxide, is a very well mixed gas, we all know. So what we could do actually is that we can make our cities more, resilient and adaptable. Now, for example, one question what you asked to Nipun about how environment or what environment does to a city. Now, let me give you a very clear example. I think we all have seen at least this or previous summer, or I think previous 2024 summer, that when the temperature in good part of India exceeded 50 degrees Celsius, at least in North India. And this year, I think you have seen that good part of Europe simply succumbed to the heat wave it faced, good part of Europe. Now, I think their really environment can play a big role, and technology as well. And I tell you how. I mean, this is very clear that in a city itself, you can see a difference in temperature of about 10 degrees C. It's very well documented and very well seen. And I think the kind of work what Salis is doing, one can clearly map at almost at a meter scale. Now imagine that in Pune, if there is a heat wave is striking. Now, let's say that mean temperature of the city is 33 for that day. Mean means climatological mean. Now imagine if some part of the city is crossing 38, 39, and if relative humidity is also high. it makes the people resident of that part of the city most vulnerable, most susceptible, correct? Now, what can we do? Now, if you plan the cities in the way that basically anything that contributes to the urban heat island effect in that part can make people comfortable, and that can save life. There where the technology can play a role. I'm just giving you one example here. There can be several such examples where the way you do the infrastructure planning, the way you bring strategic intervention where your flyover goes. We all know, and it's very well known that traffic emissions can add to the heat island effect by another few degrees Celsius, by increasing, right? So if we are able to understand those pockets of urban heat island effects, we do the interventions, that is strategic planning accordingly. We plan our traffic corridor accordingly. We move residential colonies away from that. We make sure that the most vulnerable people like aged population, the kids, the schools are not built there. And then we do plantation and water bodies in a way that can reduce those extreme heat island effect, that is the temperature going well beyond 40, 42, 43, and making actually the sensible temperature exceeding 50 degrees, and that's possible in many parts of North India. That is where I think we can really make a difference, and that is where I think technology can make a difference.
Sure. So the point to be noted here for our participants on the webcast is that I think one of the burning issues here is urban heat islands, and typically there are multiple ways we could probably manage, control, and prevent that. And I think what Professor Tripathi just narrated are some of the techniques that can become very handy while trying to solve the urban heat islanding problem. So we have another 10 more minutes. So I will probably move to our next few set of questions, but maybe I request us to probably summarize our responses and move on with the questions. So I'll quickly move to Shailesh, to Professor Bakul from here. Professor Bakul, can you tell us how this climate change that is seeping into our cities and country, how is it reshaping how cities are being designed and operated? Or has there been no change in whatsoever, even if climate change has become such a big talking point?
Thank you, Prashant. So I think half of my answer is already given by Professor Tripathi. I'd just like to add one or two things that more and more, because of the climate change, what is important is, of course, the impact being on air, but also about managing the monsoon or the rainwater. So planning for stormwater, most of our cities have not been planned for stormwater. And the UGD many times is being used, underground drainage systems, which are being planned, are being used for carrying the rainwater as well, the stormwater. So important is that linking stormwater management with proper rainwater harvesting structures so that groundwater can be built up, so that our dependency on bringing water from hundreds of kilometers away is taken care of. It will take ages for this population to depend totally on the local groundwater, but at least, we can try doing that. One of the things can be designed is India should focus on good stormwater management systems. The other thing is also the other resource, that of food. Making use of maybe rooftop agriculture wherever possible can be build. So to some extent, I'm not saying 100% dependency on food from outside can be taken, but to some extent, can we use that systems to build at least some dependency on local foods is something I think we can look at designing. While the stormwater thing is recently, a few years back, India has started looking into it seriously. But there are so many cities in India which don't have proper stormwater, resulting in, of course, your other disasters, a flood and other stuff. So that design should be taken seriously. And of course, the food dependency can be reduced. I'm keeping my answer short, keeping you the time. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. So we'll move to Shailesh. Shailesh, so I think when we're looking at these large scale systems, aka cities in this case, we need in some form monitoring, and that to at a continuous level to really come up with much more precise and pointed decisions. So what do you think? How has the tech emerged in the last couple of decades, which is making things possible that was not possible maybe a decade back?
Okay, yeah, thanks, Prashant. So hope again I'm audible, right?
Yeah.
So if I had to choose one technology in addition to AI, I would choose sensing, and especially remote sensing. If you see the earlier days, satellite platforms used to be there. We used to them. I will go into the details little later. But then, in addition to that, nowadays drones also or airborne platforms are easily available and accessible to most of these monitoring activities. In situ sensor network, Professor Tripathi, Professor Nipun both have highlighted that part. So in situ network also becomes a very integral part of this overall monitoring systems. So, and we used to have a dream. So can we have a very integrated system where some regional scale monitoring can be done by remote sensing, some local scale monitoring can be done by airborne system, and for calibration, other hyperlocal maybe monitoring, we need in situ sensors. Now that is realized to large extents, and especially if you see about the sensing technology, there was a mention of hyperspectral sensing, right? So not only spectral resolution, we call it as spectral resolution. Spectral resolution of imaging have increased, but at the same time, spatial resolution and temporal resolution, that is revisited, both of them have improved a lot. I mean, nowadays submeter resolution imagery is very easily available, right? Similarly, a satellite can revisit a particular on daily basis, weekly basis, and so there is a whole area of temporal resolution available. Now, what happens with that is that, again, going back to some of the models we discussed, right? So now we can extract information from the cities in a very detailed manner. We can understand the concrete, with age, and so on and so forth, whatnot. So the imagination is the only limit. I mean, with hyperspectral, you can do a really lot. So to just summarize, if I have to choose in addition to AI, the single most technology, then it is a remote sensing in every sense of sensing, so or rather integrated sensing.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let me move to Nipun. Nipun, I think you do a lot of work at the intersection of AI and sensing. So, can you give us some examples or concrete examples in wherein AI can actually be used from reacting to a crisis to actually preventing it? Are there any concrete examples that do exist?
Sure. Thanks, Prashant. So I'll first give a very simple example of demand response. So we know that the grid is designed for the peak, and oftentimes when the peak occurs and we go beyond the peak, like we should all give credit to the national power, which was able to manage this summer very well. But beyond the expected load, if we have load, so then they have to perhaps use more additional power plants, older, more inefficient, which will lead to more emission. So keeping the same amount of energy being consumed, can we just shift the load before or later or defer the load? I think that's a very, very simple use case. From the AI perspective, I think the control is the harder part. We can forecast, we can then also figure out that what are the things that are deferable and then move them apart. The other more, I would say more the wish is that the decisions which the cities and the managers are taking, they're all data-driven decisions. Should we do odd even or not? Should we do X, Y, Z or not? Now, these are very difficult decisions to take because of the entire things we have been discussing, the data availability, the emission data, and where is the flood happening, where are the manholes, where is the stormwater going, all of those data points are hard to get, as well as the simulations and these models which are run are extremely complex and slow. That's where again AI can come in. We can have this AI for science like models where we're building these emulators which are extremely fast. And that's I would say the holy grail where we're able to test out 20,000, 50,000 different scenarios with specific thing to tweak so that we can then control XYZ emission, pollution, flood, etc. So I think that's the need of the hour. We have to move beyond North India will be polluted, Mumbai will get flooded, Bangalore will get traffic. I think we have to move to the next intervention readiness.
Perfect. Okay. So I'll move to Dr. Praveen. Again, looping back to the discussion we're having. So given your deep tech background, how has that knowledge influenced the kind of urban green management work that you're currently doing? Can you give us some very interesting experiences wherein you have transferred your tech knowledge into that urban managed forest management?
Yeah, I think I kind of earlier also mentioned that the solution to problem lies in shaping the end user behavior.
Okay.
And you have to kind of sensitize people about these issues. So I think tech can be a very powerful tool to incentivize the right behavior. So, for example, we are using tech to track and monitor an individual trees that users are planting. Earlier, there was a lot of cynicism that we do plantation and then nothing gets taken care of, and everything effort goes waste. But when we tell people, look, I will give you a barcode, you can scan that barcode and you can see that tree and you can see its progress sitting at your home. So that trust gets built. Okay, I took some action and I can see that that simple action is actually making a difference. So that reinforces that positive behavior. And then people tell that thing to 10 other people. And that's how the whole idea is kind of spreading virally.
Mm-hmm.
So without tech, this wouldn't have been possible. And I'll actually give you one more example. I mean, all of us have heard about this old story of a temple where, the priest said, at night, come and pour one lota of milk into this vessel, and I will have a vessel full of milk by morning. And next morning, when they opened the vessel, they found it was filled with water. Because everyone thought, everyone is putting milk, but if I put one lota of water, how will it make a difference? Now imagine if you had added a monitoring technology there. That by adding you could see that you actually have contributed to the increasing of dilution. Instant, the feedback will deter people from taking that action. So similarly, I think in the broader scheme of things, the technology of monitoring is very, very important, very powerful. It can be used to incentivize the right behavior. And I think ultimately, when the behavior at masses is going to be shaped, we are going to be moving towards a sustainable world. And I think tech is the way to do it.
Sure. So we are getting to the fag end of the webinar. So probably I'll just have one last key question and then move to a series of rapid fires. So this is the last question to Professor Tripathi. So you have heard all the perspectives coming in. So can you just summarize this in a way to tell us what are some of the biggest barriers that is preventing cities to adopt sustainable practices? Of course, we talk about smartness, sustainability, we should do X, we should do Y, we are already doing it. But the rate of adoption of sustainable technologies is not really catching fire. So what is preventing that? Can you probably give us a holistic view about it?
I think the key part is that we are not able to have a very effective city level governance. And I think certainly everything is part of that, right? So, and that is not happening because of the very complex nature of cities. It's not that we don't have effective officers, but there is a limitation that they can do something about it. And there are many examples. I don't want to get into that. I think technology in a way can strengthen their hands in one, arriving at a decision which is evidence-based, then designing the interventions, and then, of course, evaluating the intervention. This all can happen in real time across all the compartments of the city. And our cities are becoming big, that they need to be the engine of economic growth. So they will grow. But while they grow, I think we need to have these technology enabled governance in the cities, so that whatever we design, it has to be optimal, and it has to be optimal in part in basically in the context of entire this complex system. So that is where I think these technologies can definitely help. I agree that that behavioral nudging is very, very important, but we cannot wait to really nudge the behavior of everyone who is living in a city. And you see, the important part to recognize here is that we have a very heterogeneous society. Any city and across the cities, there is a huge gap in terms of the socio-economic status of people. So I think that gap the technology can really help fill the gap in a very fastest way and can also help you to scale this. So that is where I think we need to look forward to do that. That's the way I think at least about it.
Sure, Shana, very well summarized, Professor Tripathi, and it also fully covers all the points we also spoke about. So last set of rapid fire, just 5 seconds each. So whatever comes to your mind, the first thing you please mention that. So we will start with Nipun. So Nipun, one technology we are investing in rather.
DPI and people.
DPI and people, wonderful. Okay. Next, we'll move to Professor Bakul. Ma'am, one metric every mayor should monitor daily.
So I take the liberty to tell a long sentence. So one is, most of us here have been scientists, technologists, researchers. So as we develop our models, are we ready to hand it over to the government officials? Do we have that much of trust on government officials, let alone the mayor? Yeah, for them to understand these things and then make a decision on that one data, which is so dynamic for the city. So I would say that it's a very difficult thing to tell one metrics which the mayor can take a decision, but it's still a long way when we actually we work with the government to make them build their capacities to help take correct decisions of the research which we do.
Perfect. Okay. So we move to Dr. Shailesh. Dr. Shailesh, biggest obstacle to sustainable cities?
Okay, so Professor Tripathi and Dr. Praveen both of them have given my answer. I'm just going to combine them. So my answer for that would be technology-enabled governance and lifestyle, or behavioral changes. Earlier, my favorite was behavioral changes, but Professor Tripathi gave the other half of the answer. So technology-enabled governance and behavioral changes.
Perfect. Very nice. Okay. So we'll go to Dr. Praveen Bhagwat. One urban innovation that will become mainstream in the coming years?
I think transition from fossil to electric. I think this is bound to happen and is a right thing to do.
Okay, great. And finally, we'll come to Professor Tripathi. One prediction for cities in 2050. So we're looking for a long horizon.
I think India, as you know, that first of the cities were born in India, right? So India is the mother place for cities. So I see that our cities will be very thriving. But one thing I definitely would caution that, remember that we all talk about this sustainable tripod.
Yeah.
I will follow Dr. actually Rao in giving a little longer answer, if you permit. So that profit, people and nature. I think everyone would like to, as Praveen alluded to that, by nature, that enterprise people want to have some economic activity, so it has to be profitable. People can also take care of themselves, but nature can't. So it's very important that environment has to be the central theme of as our cities prosper. If it doesn't, then I think we might see wrath of that nature. So I think while we grow, while our cities become prosper, we must take care of nature and environment in our cities.
Perfect. So I think we are right on time. We are at 7:27. So we have our last 2-3 minutes. So there's just one question in the chat, but I think what we will do is that we'll just summarize what we have all discussed. So I made a lot of notes. And in fact, I'll just read out some keywords. So things that came up was systems approach, infra plus environment together, efficiency, resilience, regenerative, close the loop, decision support, DPI, intelligence. Then we had overconsumption, optimize, grow but reduce consumption. And then we had the urban metabolism system, use that for infrastructure planning and predictions, used tech to build trust, empower local governance, go for monitoring to decisions to actions, and close the loop. And finally, keep the people and environment of center of what we do. Otherwise, the cities will not be in the same form factor as we are currently living today. It will become worse. So I think a lot of things have come out. So if I have to just summarize everything in one go, is a lot of things to summarize. So I think we'll conclude this discussion with the point that sustainable cities is a complex mixture of things. Cities by themselves are very complex and complicated. Technology does play a role in trying to close multiple gaps in cities, but we cannot always look at cities from a technology lens. It has to look from a people, environment, and socio-economic lenses, and we have to see how technology actually helps uplift and close the gaps over there. And if you do it right, then I think we will probably move towards a system where cities will be sustainable by design. So to summarize, sustainability is not merely going to be an objective of smart city. It will probably define the characters of cities as we go forward. And with that, let me thank all the panelists. You all have given wonderful points. I am very sure that your audience has taken thorough notes of it, and it will be a reference for people who are working in this domain to actually get inspired from and work on some very difficult and impactful problems and solutions. So thank you all for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Prashant.
Thank you.